The neon sign flickered above the dusty diner on the edge of Route 66, casting a hazy red glow over the cracked parking lot. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour when the desert wind whispered secrets through the sagebrush, carrying the faint scent of rain that never came. Inside, the air was thick with the aroma of sizzling burgers and stale coffee, the jukebox humming a forgotten country tune about lost highways. Olivia Ramirez wiped down the counter for the third time that night, her apron stained with grease spots, her dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail that spoke of long shifts and longer worries. She was 28 with calloused hands from years of scraping by in this nowhere town, but her eyes, sharp, watchful, missed nothing. That's what made her good at her job, and what would soon make her a hero in ways she never imagined. A low rumble shattered the quiet, growing into a thunderous roar as a lone motorcycle pulled into the lot. The bike was a beast, chrome gleaming under the moon like polished silver, its engine growling to a halt with a final cough of exhaust. The rider swung off, boots hitting the gravel with a crunch that echoed like a promise. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his leather jacket scarred from roads unseen, a patch on his back reading Iron Vow in faded stitching. Ethan Hale, though no one in the diner knew his name yet, removed his helmet, revealing a face etched with lines from too many sunrises and sunsets. His beard was streaked with grey, eyes shadowed by a past he kept locked away. A war buddy's last words, a blood oath sworn under fire, a promise to protect the innocent that had pulled him from retirement time and again. Olivia glanced up as he entered, the bell above the door jingling like a warning. He slid onto a stool at the far end of the counter, away from the two truckers nursing their beers in the corner booth. She poured him a coffee without asking, black, steaming, and set it down. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice steady but curious, the way she probed every stranger who rolled through. He nodded, flexing his gloved hands on the mug. That's when she saw it. A faint white residue dusting the leather of his right glove like flour from a baker's hand. But wrong. Too fine, too deliberate. It caught the light from the overhead bulb, shimmering unnaturally. Ethan's gaze met hers for a split second, a flicker of something raw passing between them. Guarded, almost pleading. He brushed at the glove absently, but the powder lingered. A silent accusation in the quiet diner. Outside, the desert stretched endless, but trouble was closer than the horizon. In the shadows of the alley behind the diner, a figure lurked, a man in a nondescript sedan, engine idling low, his face obscured by the brim of a cap. He'd been tailing Ethan for miles, ever since the biker left the last gas station. The powder? It wasn't flour. It was a trace from a hidden vial in Ethan's saddlebag, a chemical compound meant for sabotage, whispered about in the underbelly of border towns. Not poison in the lethal sense, but something insidious, a sleep agent, airborne, designed to knock out a whole room without a sound. Ethan wasn't the villain here. He was the hunter, carrying it as evidence against a syndicate that preyed on the vulnerable, smuggling not just goods, but fear into quiet lives like Olivia's. She didn't know that yet. All she knew was the unease prickling her skin, the way the truckers' laughter had died down, their eyes darting to the window. One of them, a burly guy with a tattoo snaking up his neck, stood abruptly, muttering about a smoke. Olivia's heart quickened. She'd seen enough late-night transients to spot trouble brewing, the subtle shift in posture, the hand slipping into a pocket. But it was Ethan's glove that sealed it. Years ago, her brother had worked security at a warehouse, coming home with stories of white dust jobs gone wrong, silent takeovers where entire crews vanished into the night. "Hey," she said softly to Ethan, leaning in as if to refill his coffee. Her voice dropped to a whisper, urgent. "That powder on your glove. It's not right. You running from something or chasing it?" Ethan's jaw tightened, his fingers curling around the mug. He hadn't expected this. a waitress with eyes like a hawk, seeing through the grime of his mission. The promise that drove him flickered in his mind. Back in '09, under the blistering Iraqi sun, his squad leader, Marcus, had made him swear it. "If the world's gone rotten, Ethan, you ride for the ones who can't. Protect the spark in the dark." Marcus didn't make it home, but the oath did, pulling Ethan into the Iron Vow crew, a brotherhood of vets and wanderers who lived by loyalty over law. Tonight, that oath led him here, to this diner, where whispers of a planned hit on a local whistleblower had drawn him like a moth to flame. The powder was proof, lifted from a drop point, but now it felt like a noose. Before he could respond, the bell jingled again. The trucker from the booth stepped out, but not for a smoke. He circled the building, phone to his ear, voice low and clipped. Inside, Olivia's mind raced. The diner was empty save for them and the other patron, an old-timer dozing in the back. If that powder was what she feared, some kind of silent weapon, the whole place could be a trap. Her quick thinking kicked in, born from instincts honed by loss, her brother's overdose years back, the family fractured, leaving her to guard her own patch of earth. "Listen," she hissed, sliding a napkin toward Ethan with a number scribbled on it. Her cell, from the emergency roster behind the register. "Whatever you're into, you need backup. I'm not letting this turn into one of those stories where no one walks away." Her words hung heavy, a bridge between strangers, igniting something in Ethan's chest, a reminder that promises weren't solitary. He nodded once, the ghost of a smile cracking his facade. In that moment, as the wind howled outside, the diner became ground zero for a reckoning. The silent attack loomed, but so did an unlikely alliance, forged in the glow of a flickering sign, ready to ride against the shadows. The rumble of distant engines joined the wind, Ethan's crew, sensing his delay, closing in from the highway. Olivia glanced out the window, her pulse steady now, resolve hardening like desert steel. This wasn't just a coffee stop anymore, it was the spark. Word count 872. The desert night deepened, the diner's neon buzz the only heartbeat against the vast silence. Olivia's hand lingered on the napkin, her scribbled number a fragile lifeline in the grease-smeared world of the counter. Ethan's eyes, weathered by miles and memories, locked onto hers, a silent acknowledgement that this stranger had just pierced his armor. Outside, the wind carried the low growl of approaching engines like thunder rolling in from the Badlands. But inside, the air thickened with unspoken questions. The old-timer in the back stirred, his newspaper rustling like dry leaves, oblivious to the storm brewing. Ethan leaned forward, voice a gravelly murmur that blended with the jukebox's fading melody. "You got sharp eyes, miss. That powder. It's not what you think. Not my doing." He glanced at his glove again, the white residue catching the light like frost on barbed wire. It was a remnant from the vial he'd intercepted hours ago, swiped from a shadowed meetup at a derelict truck stop. The syndicate, faceless suits with ties to border smugglers, planned to use it on a whistleblower holed up in the next town over. A man named Elias, a former accountant who'd turned on his bosses after they targeted families like Olivia's, preying on the desperate with false promises of work across the line. Ethan's oath to Marcus echoed in his skull, "Protect the spark." Elias was that spark, and the powder was the snuff. Olivia's pulse thrummed, but she kept her movement steady, pouring another splash of coffee to mask the tremor in her grip. She'd lost too much to fear. Her brother Javier, gone to the shadows of addiction after one too many white dust shifts at that warehouse. The family she'd pieced together from scraps, her abuela's old recipes, the diner's night owls who became confidants, had taught her to spot the rot before it spread. "Doesn't matter whose it is," she whispered back, sliding the pot away. "If it's trouble, it's here now. That trucker outside, he's not lighting up. Saw him slip something under his jacket. Ethan's instincts fired like a misfiring engine. He eased off the stool, the leather of his jacket creaking softly, and moved to the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. The trucker, big guy, necked like a coiled snake, huddled by the sedan's rear tire, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing sharply. In the distance, headlights pierced the dark, not the steady beam of semis, but the staggered formation of bikes. Ethan's Iron Vow brothers cutting through the night. They'd been en route from their desert outpost, a ragtag haven of vets and road warriors who'd sworn the same vow under a blood moon years back. But they were minutes out, too far to stop what was unfolding. A sharp crackle from the trucker's phone cut the quiet, and Olivia's stomach twisted. She knew the signs. The way a man's shoulders squared when orders came down, her mind raced back to Javier's stories, silent takeovers, where the dust turned crowds to sleepwalkers, easy pickings for whatever came next. Not death, but erasure. The whistleblower, Elias, was due to meet a contact here at dawn, spilling ledgers that could topple the syndicate's grip on the route. If they dusted the diner, witnesses would vanish. The spark snuffed before it ignited. "Get down," Ethan hissed, grabbing her arm just as the trucker rounded the corner, a small canister glinting in his hand, twinned to the vial in Ethan's bag. The man paused at the door, eyes scanning the lot, then pushed inside with feigned casualness, bell jingling like a mocking chime. He was alone now. The other trucker nowhere in sight, but the air hummed with threat. "Coffee, darling," he drawled, sliding onto a stool 2 seats from Ethan, his free hand drumming the counter. Up close, Olivia saw the sweat beading on his brow, the unnatural pallor that spoke of nerves or worse. She nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and turned to the urn, buying seconds. Ethan slipped the napkin into his pocket, his mind flashing to the crew. Brothers like Caleb, a medic who'd patched him up in the sands, and Riley, the quiet enforcer with a cross tattooed over his heart. They'd ride through hell for the vow, but tonight it was just him and this waitress, her quick thinking the only shield. "You ever make a promise you couldn't break?" he murmured to her as she poured, low enough for only her ears. Olivia's hand steadied on the mug. "Every shift. Promised my brother I'd watch the backs of folks like you, loners who roll in carrying ghosts." She set the coffee down for the trucker, but her foot nudged the emergency pedal under the counter, the one that lit a silent alarm to the sheriff's outpost 20 miles out. No sirens yet, but time was a razor. The trucker sipped, eyes flicking to Ethan, then to the window where the first bike lights crested the horizon. Tension coiled like a spring in the diner, the jukebox clicking to silence. The trucker shifted, his jacket bulging slightly. Another canister. Ethan's hand hovered near his boot knife, not for blood, but for the truth he carried. The powder on his glove mocked him now, a badge of the hunt. Olivia caught his gaze, a nod passing between them, strangers bound by the invisible threads of honor. Outside, the engines grew louder, a convoy of shadows racing to the rescue, but inside, the real battle waged in whispers and watchful eyes. Suddenly, the trucker stood, feigning a wallet drop, bending low. Olivia's heart slammed, now or never. She snatched the hot coffee pot and accidentally swung it wide, scalding liquid splashing across his arm. He yelped, staggering back, the canister tumbling from his grip to clatter on the tile. It didn't break, but the hiss of escaping vapor filled the air, faint and sickly sweet. Ethan lunged, pinning the man's wrist with the boot, his voice a low thunder. "Game's up. The vow sees all." The old-timer woke with a start, but Olivia was already moving, grabbing a rag to smother the leak, her abuela's voice in her head. "Clean the mess before it spreads." The door burst open as the first Iron Vow bikes screeched into the lot, leather-clad figures dismounting like avenging specters under the neon's glow. Caleb was first, medical kit in hand, assessing the scene with practiced calm. "Ethan, what's the play?" "Containment," Ethan replied, hauling the trucker up by the collar. The man spat curses, but his fight died as more brothers encircled the diner, a wall of chrome and loyalty. Olivia stood tall amid the chaos, the powder's threat neutralized by her split-second choice. In that moment, as the desert wind whipped through the open door, carrying away the last wisps of vapor, she felt the weight of a new promise forming, not spoken, but sealed in the diner's flickering light. The spark endured, and the ride was just beginning. The desert air rushed in through the open door like a cold reckoning, carrying the acrid tang of scorched coffee and the faint, chemical bite of the spilled vapor. Olivia's rag pressed firmly against the canister's seam, her knuckles white from the effort, as if she could will the threat into submission. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the tiled floor where the trucker sprawled, his arm steaming from the scald, face twisted in a mix of pain and fury. Ethan's boot held steady on the man's wrist, the pressure just enough to pin without breaking, a veteran's restraint, honed in sands far from here. The iron vow riders fanned out, their silhouettes filling the doorway like guardians from a forgotten legend, leather creaking and boots scraping in unison. Caleb knelt beside the canister first, his medic's hands gloved and precise, pulling a seal from his kit to cap the leak. "Easy now," he murmured to Olivia, his voice calm as a steady pulse, eyes flicking up to meet hers. "You've got the touch of someone who's stared down worse than this." He was the crew's healer, a former field surgeon with scars hidden under his sleeves, drawn to the vow after losing his own squad to a betrayal that still haunted his dreams. Riley loomed in the background, arms crossed over his broad chest, the cross tattoo peeking from his collar like a silent vow of his own. He scanned the lot through the window, ensuring no shadows stirred beyond the bike's gleaming ranks. The trucker wheezed, trying to twist free, but Ethan's grip was iron. "You don't know what you're messing with," he snarled, his drawl thick with the border's rough edges. Sweat beaded on his forehead, mixing with the coffee stains on his shirt, and his eyes darted wildly. To the door, the counter, the old-timer now frozen in his booth, clutching his newspaper like a shield. Olivia straightened, wiping her hands on her apron, the adrenaline sharpening her senses to the metallic scent of fear in the air. She'd acted on instinct, that coffee pot swing a desperate bid to buy time, but now, with these strangers encircling the chaos, she felt the weight of what came next. Her brother's ghost lingered in her mind, Javier's warnings about men like this, pawns in games too big for one life. Ethan leaned down, his voice a low rumble that cut through the diner's hum. "Talk! Who's pulling your strings? The dust isn't for show, it's for silencing folks who speak up." The powder on his own glove felt heavier now, a mirror to the threat, but his was evidence, lifted clean from the syndicate's drop. Back in the war, Marcus had taught him the value of truth over force. Extract it, don't spill blood. The crew knew the stakes. Whispers had reached their outpost days ago about Elias, the accountant turned reluctant hero, hiding ledgers that exposed the syndicate's web, false jobs luring families into debt traps, vanishing them across the line with a puff of engineered sleep. The trucker spat to the side, his bravado cracking like dry earth. "You think you're heroes? They're everywhere. Elias won't make dawn." But his words trembled, betraying the fear of a man caught in the machine. Olivia stepped closer, her presence a quiet force, the counter at her back like an anchor. "Dawn's closer than you think," she said, her tone even, laced with the steel of someone who'd rebuilt after loss. She'd scribbled that number on the napkin, not out of pity, but a deeper pull, the promise to Javier, whispered at his bedside. "I'll keep watch, hermano, for the ones who can't." This diner this night was her watch now. Riley moved in, his shadow falling over the trucker like a judgment. "Names, drop points, or we ride you to the edge and let the desert ask." No threats of harm, just the unspoken code of the road, leveraged through loyalty, not brutality. The crew had faced worse. Corrupt badges turning blind eyes, institutions crumbling under greed. Ethan's mind raced to the vial in his saddlebag, the key to proving the syndicate's reach. But Elias needed extraction first. The whistleblower was tucked in a safe house off the old highway. Coordinates burned into Ethan's memory from an encrypted call earlier that evening. If the dust hit there, it wouldn't just silence one man, it would bury a dozen families' hopes. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the diner's windows and stirring dust devils across the lot. The old-timer finally spoke, his voice quavering but clear. "I seen 'em before. Suits in the shadows back in 18. Took my nephew's crew, said it was an accident." His words hung heavy, a thread connecting the past to this moment, igniting murmurs among the riders. Caleb sealed the canister fully, tucking it into a padded case. "We've got what we need here, but Ethan's right. Elias is the linchpin." He glanced at Olivia, respect in his eyes. "You in? This ain't just a diner brawl." She hesitated, the steam from the spilled coffee still curling like ghosts on the floor. Her shift ended in hours, but the vow in her veins, the one to protect the fragile sparks, pulled stronger. "If it means stopping this dust from touching more lives, yeah, I'm in." Ethan nodded, releasing the trucker into Riley's hold. The man zip-tied with quick efficiency, no bruises left to tell tales. The crew moved like a well-oiled engine, loading the captive into a sidecar rig, the bike's engines coughing to life in a symphony of resolve. As they prepared to roll, Ethan turned to Olivia, pressing the napkin back into her hand, now with a sketched map added in hasty pencil. "Meet us at mile marker 47. Elias is counting on it. You saved this place tonight, now we save the rest." The neon sign flickered above, painting their faces in red promise. The desert's vastness a canvas for the ride ahead. She watched them peel out, taillights fading into the night like shooting stars, her heart pounding with the thrill of chosen kin. The silent attack had been thwarted here, but the syndicate's shadow stretched long, demanding justice not with fists, but with unyielding honor. In the quiet aftermath, Olivia locked the diner door, the bell's final jingle a punctuation to the storm. She pocketed the napkin, the weight of alliance settling like a new leather jacket on her shoulders. Dawn crept closer, painting the horizon in faint gold, but the real light was the spark they'd kindled, a promise renewed, binding biker and waitress in the fight for what was right. The road called, and for the first time in years, she was ready to answer. Word count, 872. The first hints of dawn clawed at the eastern sky, turning the desert horizon into a bruised canvas of purple and gold. Olivia stood in the diner's empty lot, the gravel crunching under her boots as she watched the last taillight of the Iron Vow convoy vanish into the haze. The air still carried the faint, sickly sweetness of the neutralized vapor, a reminder that clung like morning dew on her skin. She locked the diner's back door with a decisive click, her apron discarded inside, replaced by a worn denim jacket that had seen better days, much like her resolve, now sharpened to a point. The napkin in her pocket felt like contraband, its scribbled map a compass to something bigger than late-night shifts and greasy counters. Javier's voice echoed in her mind, a ghost urging her forward. "Watch for the good ones, Liv. They're the ones who show up when the world's turning blind." She fired up her old pickup, the engine sputtering to life with a reluctant groan, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn chill. The road unspooled before her like a black ribbon, flanked by saguaros standing sentinel in the dim light. Mile marker 47 wasn't far. 10 miles of empty highway where the desert whispered warnings through the open window. Olivia's hands gripped the wheel, knuckles paling, as fragments of the night replayed. The trucker's snarl, Ethan's steady gaze, the way Caleb's calm had anchored the chaos. These weren't just bikers, they were keepers of oaths, much like the ones she'd buried with her brother. The syndicate's shadow loomed larger now, a web of corruption that snared the vulnerable, families lured by phantom jobs, only to wake in chains or worse. Elias, the whistleblower, was the break in that web, and her quick thinking back at the diner had bought him time. But time was a thief in these parts. As she crested a low rise, the mile marker appeared, a rusted post leaning like a weary soldier etched with faded numbers. No signs of the crew yet, just the wind scouring sand across the asphalt, carrying the distant howl of coyotes. Olivia pulled off onto a dirt shoulder, killing the engine, her breath steadying in the sudden quiet. The safe house was nearby, tucked in a forgotten arroyo, a ramshackle cabin once used by miners, now a bolt hole for those running from ghosts. She stepped out, the cool air nipping at her face, and scanned the terrain. Boulders casting long shadows, the faint glint of dew on creosote bushes. Her cell buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number, but she answered, voice low. "Talk to me." Ethan's gravelly tone cut through the static. "You're early. Good. Elias is spooked. Says they've got eyes on the ridge. We're circling wide, 2 minutes out. Stay low." The line went dead, leaving her with the pulse of the desert and the weight of alliance. She crouched behind the truck, eyes tracing the ridgeline where scrub oak clung to rocky outcrops. A flicker of movement caught her, a silhouette too deliberate for wind-stirred brush. Her heart kicked up, instincts firing like the diner's old coffee urn. Not a coyote. A watcher, cap low, binoculars glinting briefly in the growing light. Before she could signal, the rumble built from the south, engines multiple approaching like a storm front. The Iron Vow convoy materialized from the dust, bikes fanning out in a protective arc, Ethan at the lead. He killed his motor first, swinging off with fluid grace, his jacket dusted with the night's grit. Caleb and Riley flanked him, the captured trucker secured in a trailing van, his curses muffled by the roar. "You see anything?" Ethan asked, striding to her side, his presence a solid wall against the uncertainty. Olivia nodded toward the ridge, her whisper urgent. "Up there, lone spotter, maybe more." Ethan's eyes narrowed, scanning with the precision of a man who'd survived ambushes in foreign dunes. The vow pulled at him again, Marcus's words a tattoo on his soul. "Guard the light, brother, even if it costs the dark." This wasn't just about Elias. It was about the families he'd seen shattered. The border towns bled dry by suits who traded lives for ledgers. The powder incident at the diner was a skirmish. The real war was dismantling the machine. Riley moved like a shadow, slipping toward the rocks with a rifle slung low. Not for killing, but deterrence, the crew's code etched in every choice. "I'll flush him," he murmured, cross-tattoo catching the light as he vanished into the brush. The group waited, tension coiling tighter than barbed wire, the desert silence amplifying every rustle. Olivia's mind raced to Elias. A quiet man, she'd learned from Ethan's brief call, with ledgers that named names, exposed the syndicate's false fronts preying on the desperate. Her own ties ran deep. Javier had tangled with similar shadows, his white dust shifts a gateway to ruin. Joining this ride meant risking her fragile peace, but turning back, that would betray the spark she'd promised to protect. A sharp crack echoed from the ridge, not gunfire, but a rock slide triggered by Riley's approach. The spotter bolted, scrambling down the slope in a tumble of dust and panic, only to freeze as Caleb stepped into view, hands raised in mock surrender, but eyes like steel. "Easy, a friend. Drop the glass and walk." The man complied, binoculars clattering to the ground, his face paling under the cap. No fight in him, just a hired eye, trembling as Riley zip-tied his wrists. "Bosses said watch the marker," he stammered, voice cracking. "Dust drop incoming at the cabin, for the accountant and anyone helping." Ethan's jaw set, the powder on his glove now a grim prophecy fulfilled. How many? Root? The questions came measured, extracting truth like pulling thorns. The spotter spilled it all. 3 operatives, a van rigged with canisters, timed for the dawn meet. Elias was inside the cabin, unaware, his ledgers the syndicate's nightmare. Olivia's resolve hardened. She'd seen enough erasure in her brother's eyes to know silence was complicity. "We hit them first," she said, surprising even herself, the words tasting of newfound steel. No more sparks snuffed. The crew mobilized, bikes humming low as they crested toward the arroyo. Ethan led, Olivia riding pillion behind him, the wind whipping her hair like a banner of defiance. The cabin emerged, a weathered shack nestled in the dry wash, smoke curling lazily from a tin chimney. No van yet, but tire tracks scarred the earth, fresh and ominous. They dismounted silently, fanning out, Caleb to the rear for extraction, Riley covering the flank. Ethan approached the door, knocking twice, code from the encrypted line. It creaked open, revealing Elias, mid-40s, hollow-cheeked, clutching a battered briefcase like a lifeline. His eyes widened at the group, relief mingling with fear. "You hail? The Vow Riders?" Ethan nodded, pulling him out. "Time to move, troubles inbound." But as Elias stepped into the light, the distant growl of an engine shattered the calm, a black van cresting the arroyo rim, dust plume rising like a warning flag. Headlights swept the scene, illuminating the powder canisters glinting in the rear window. Olivia's breath caught. The silent attack was here, poised to erase them all. Ethan shoved Elias behind a boulder, his voice a urgent command. "Hold the line! We end this clean." The van skidded to a halt, doors flying open as three figures emerged, masks obscuring faces, canisters in hand. No shots fired. The syndicate's way was subtler, a fog of forgetfulness to cover tracks. But the iron vow stood firm, a phalanx of loyalty against the encroaching mist. Olivia grabbed a loose branch, heart pounding with the rhythm of justice deferred too long. The first wisps escaped a canister, curling toward them like serpents in the dawn light, but Caleb was ready. Sprayer from his kit dispersing it harmlessly into the wind. Riley charged the nearest operative, tackling him with controlled force, the canister skittering away, unfired. Ethan faced the leader, a standoff in the arroyo's throat, voices low over the hiss of escaping vapor. "Your dust ends here. The ledgers go public. Families get their due." The man hesitated, mask slipping to reveal sweat-slicked doubt, the weight of corruption cracking under the biker's unyielding gaze. No blows landed. Truth was the weapon, the vow's quiet power prevailing. The operatives faltered, hands raising in surrender as the mist cleared, dawn's full gold bathing the scene in revelation. With the threats bound and canisters secured, Elias clutched his briefcase tighter, gratitude etching his features. "You, all of you, this saves more than me." Olivia met Ethan's eyes across the dust, a nod passing between them. The waitress and the biker, bound now in a family forged from shadows. The road ahead stretched endless, but the spark burned brighter, promises renewed in the light of a new day. As the crew mounted up, engines roaring to life, the desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the justice that followed. If this chapter moved you, smash that like button. It helps spread these stories of honor and heart to riders everywhere. The sun crested the arroyo rim like a reluctant witness, its rays slicing through the settling dust and painting the bound operatives in stark relief. Olivia's grip on the branch loosened, the wood rough against her palm, as the last wisps of vapor dissipated into the warming air. The scent of creosote mingled with the chemical tang, a harsh perfume for the morning's uneasy truce. Elias huddled behind the boulder, his briefcase clutched like a talisman, breaths coming in shallow bursts that echoed the fear he'd carried for weeks. Ethan's stance was unyielding, a pillar of leather and resolve amid the scattered canisters, his eyes scanning the horizon for any lingering threats. The Iron Vow crew moved with quiet efficiency, Caleb cataloguing the evidence, Riley securing the van's keys, their actions a testament to bonds forged in fire, not blood. "You did good," Ethan said to Olivia, his voice low, carrying the weight of shared secrets as he approached. The powder residue on his glove had faded with the night's sweat, but its memory lingered, a symbol of the shadows they'd pierced. She nodded, the adrenaline ebbing into a steady hum in her veins, her denim jacket dusted with the arroyo's red earth. This wasn't her world of counters and coffee pots, but the pull of it felt right, like honoring Javier's unspoken oath to stand against the unseen predators that had claimed him. The syndicate's operatives knelt in the dirt, masks discarded, faces etched with the defeat of men who'd traded conscience for coin. No heroes among them, just cogs in a machine that ground down the desperate, luring families with whispers of opportunity only to ensnare them in silence. Elias rose slowly, dusting off his rumpled shirt, his eyes meeting Olivia's with a gratitude that bordered on reverence. "I heard about the diner on the radio scanner. Static bursts from the outpost. If you hadn't acted—" He trailed off, the briefcase swinging lightly in his hand, its contents a ledger of names and routes that could unravel the web. Backroom deals, false job postings that funneled the vulnerable into labor camps across the line, all veiled in promises of a better life. Elias had been one of them once, an accountant blinded by ledgers until a raid on a migrant camp opened his eyes. Children separated, voices stifled. His turning point had been a quiet vow to a mother he'd failed to save, pulling him into this flight. Caleb finished sealing the canisters into evidence bags, his medic's kit zipped shut with a finality that spoke volumes. "These won't see another dawn without a judge's light, but we've got to move. Their network's got ears everywhere." He glanced at the operatives, one of them muttering about reinforcements, but Riley silenced him with a stern look, the cross on his neck glinting like a warning. The crew had danced this edge before, corrupt outposts turning blind, sheriffs in pockets deep as desert wells. Ethan's mind flickered to Marcus, the squad leader whose last breath had sealed their brotherhood's creed: protect the overlooked, ride for the voiceless. This Arroyo standoff was a skirmish won, but the war demanded they deliver Elias to safety, his testimony, the blade that could sever the syndicate's hold. Olivia stepped forward, her boots kicking up small puffs of dust, and helped Elias to his feet. "You're not alone in this. We've all got ghosts pushing us." Her words hung in the air, simple but profound, bridging the gap between waitress and whistleblower. The desert wind stirred, carrying the faint rumble of distant traffic from the highway, a reminder that the world spun on, oblivious to the reckonings in its fringes. They loaded the operatives into the captured van, zip ties firm but fair, no marks left to fuel revenge. Riley took the wheel, his quiet demeanor a steady anchor, while Caleb rode shotgun, monitoring for any tricks. Ethan turned to the group, his voice cutting through the morning hush like an engine's rev. "Safe House 2 is off the old mining trail, neutral ground, wired for alerts. We escort Elias there, then call in the clean sweep." He mounted his bike, the chrome catching the sun in blinding flashes, and Olivia climbed on behind him again, her arms wrapping around his waist with a trust born of the night's trials. The crew formed up, engines purring to life in a low chorus that vibrated through the ground, a symphony of loyalty against the encroaching day. Elias rode with Caleb in a sidecar rig, the briefcase secured like a sacred relic, his face set in determination as the convoy pulled out of the arroyo. The trail wound through canyons carved by forgotten floods, red rock walls rising like silent judges on either side. Olivia felt the rhythm of the bike beneath her, the steady thrum syncing with her heartbeat, the wind tugging at her ponytail like an invitation to let go of old fears. Flashes of the diner replayed, the scalding coffee, the canister's hiss. But now they fueled her, transforming hesitation into purpose. Javier would have approved, his stories of warehouse shadows no longer just warnings, but weapons in her arsenal. Ahead, The mining trail narrowed, flanked by rusted relics of booms long bust, abandoned shafts yawning like open wounds in the earth. A sudden screech shattered the calm. Tires on gravel from a side path, a dust cloud billowing as two sedans barreled into view, syndicate reinforcements cutting off the route. No masks this time, just grim faces in the glare, hands gripping steering wheels like lifelines. Ethan's signal was immediate, a raised fist that fanned the bikes into defensive formation. "Flank and contain!" he barked over the roar, veering left as Olivia held tight, her eyes scanning for openings. The sedans skidded to block the trail, doors slamming as four men emerged, not with canisters but bats and chains, a desperate escalation, the syndicate's subtlety cracking under pressure. Caleb gunned his engine, circling wide to shield Elias, while Riley peeled off to draw fire, metaphorical as the cruise code shunned the gun's roar. Olivia's mind raced, spotting a narrow gap between boulders. "There! The washout!" she shouted, pointing to a dry riverbed veering right, hidden by scrub. Ethan nodded, trusting her eyes as much as his own, and led the charge through it, the bike bouncing over ruts that jarred her teeth. The sedans couldn't follow, their bulk mired in the dust, engines whining in futile pursuit. Behind, Riley and the others harried the flanks, forcing the drivers back with maneuvers honed on endless roads. No collisions, just the pressure of unyielding presence. They burst onto the upper trail, the safe house in sight, a squat adobe structure blending into the hillside, its door barred and windows shuttered. Elias dismounted first, key in hand, ushering them inside as the crew secured the perimeter. The interior was sparse, a table scarred by years, a radio crackling with static, maps pinned to walls tracing the syndicate's veins. "This holds till the feds bite," Elias said, setting the briefcase down, his voice steadier now. "Your ride. It's more than transport, it's redemption for folks like me." Ethan clasped his shoulder, the vow's essence passing in that touch. "We all carry it. The spark doesn't dim if we fan it." Olivia leaned against the wall, catching her breath, the room's cool air a balm after the chase. Outside, the sedan's engines faded, retreating like whipped dogs, but the victory tasted of vigilance yet to come. Caleb tuned the radio, patching through to a trusted contact, a journalist with ties to oversight boards, ready to amplify the ledgers. Riley stood watch at the window, his cross a silhouette against the light. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden beams through the shutters, the group shared a moment of quiet. Waterskins passed, stories murmured of losses that mirrored their own. Olivia felt the threads weaving tighter, biker, waitress, whistleblower, a chosen family rising from the dust. The silent attack had been turned back, but the road to full justice stretched on, paved with promises that outlasted the shadows. In this hidden haven, amid the whisper of wind through cracks, they prepared for the next leg, delivering truth to those who could wield it, honoring the oaths that bound them. The desert watched, impartial, as honor's quiet engine revved toward dawn's promise fulfilled. The safe house's adobe walls seemed to breathe with the desert's midday heat, the air inside thick and still, laced with the faint must of old timber and sun-baked earth. Sunlight slanted through the shuttered windows in golden shafts, illuminating motes of dust that danced like fleeting memories. Olivia sat at the scarred wooden table, her fingers tracing the grain's knots absent-mindedly, the weight of the morning's chase settling into her bones like fine sand. Across from her, Elias pored over his briefcase, the ledgers spread out like a map of sins, columns of numbers detailing the syndicate's grip on lives, from fabricated job offers that lured the desperate to hidden camps where silence was enforced with whispers of vapor. His hands trembled slightly as he pointed to a highlighted entry, voice hushed. "This one's personal, a family from my old neighborhood. Gone in a night, no traces left but empty cribs." Ethan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over his leather jacket, the iron vow patch catching a stray beam of light like a badge of quiet defiance. His eyes, shadowed by the brim of his helmet still tucked under one arm, flicked to the radio where Caleb adjusted dials with surgical precision. The device crackled to life, static giving way to a tinny voice, a journalist named Lena, her tone urgent but steady, patched in from a secure line in the city. "I've got the outline. If these ledgers check out, we go public by dusk, but you need to get them to the drop. Neutral ground, Old Mill off Route 12. Watch for tails, their ears are long." The connection hissed and cut, leaving the room in a hush broken only by the distant call of a hawk wheeling overhead. Olivia felt the pull of it all, the threads of fate weaving her deeper into this tapestry of honor. Back at the diner, spotting that powder had been instinct, a spark from Javier's lessons in spotting shadows before they swallowed light. Now, riding with these men, Ethan's steady backer anchor through the ruts, Caleb's calmer balm for frayed nerves, Riley's watchful silence a shield, she recognized the echo of chosen family. It mirrored the one she'd lost, pieced together from Abuela's stories of resilience and her brother's fierce protectiveness. "How far does this go?" she asked, her voice cutting the quiet, eyes on Elias. "The families, do they know you're fighting for them?" Elias met her gaze, his hollow cheeks lifting in a weary smile. "Some do. A mother wrote me after her boy vanished, said, 'Bring him home, or bring the truth.' That's my vow now." The word hung heavy, resonating with Ethan's own oath to Marcus, sworn in the choking dust of a foreign war. "Guard the overlooked, let no spark die unseen." The biker shifted, the creak of leather a punctuation to his thoughts. He'd ridden solo for years after the squad fell, the iron vow a loose brotherhood, until calls like this pulled them tight. This syndicate wasn't new. Border vipers peddling illusions of prosperity, only to deliver chains veiled in sleep. The powder, that insidious dust, was their signature, not for killing, but for erasing resistance, leaving voids where voices once rose. Riley stirred from his post at the window, his cross tattoo stark against his sun-darkened skin as he peered into the shimmering heat. "Perimeter's clear, but the trail's hot. Those sedans from the Arroyo, they'll circle back." His words were sparse, each one weighted, born from a past where silence had cost him a partner in the force, turning him to the road's unyielding code. Caleb nodded, packing the ledgers into a reinforced satchel, his medic's hands gentle yet firm. "We split the load, Elias with me to the mill. Ethan and Riley on flank. Olivia, you take the van with the evidence. It's armored enough to buy time." She rose, the chair scraping like a reluctant goodbye to the fragile safety of the room. The van sat outside, its black paint scarred from the earlier skirmish, engine ticking as it cooled. Climbing in, she felt the dashboard's worn leather under her palms, the keys heavy with implication. This wasn't just transport, it was carrying the weight of redemption for strangers she'd never meet. Mothers clutching faded photos, fathers staring at empty doorways. As the crew mounted up, engines rumbling to life in a low, synchronized growl that vibrated through the ground, Olivia keyed the ignition. The convoy pulled out, dust plume rising like a veil behind them. The mining trail giving way to wider asphalt under a sky bleaching to relentless blue. The road twisted through canyons that funneled the wind into hot gusts, whipping sand against the windshield in stinging veils. Olivia kept pace in the van's rear view, watching the bikes weave ahead. Ethan's lead cutting sharp lines, Caleb's sidecar cradling Elias like a precious cargo. Her mind wandered to the diner, now miles and a lifetime away, its neon sign probably flickering under the sun. That powder on Ethan's glove had been the crack in the facade, her quick swing of the coffee pot, the first strike against the silence. But doubt crept in like cooling shadows. What if the ledgers weren't enough? What if the syndicate's reach extended to the journalists, the oversight boards, turning justice to ash? A glint on the horizon snapped her focus, a convoy of dust, 3 vehicles closing from the east, syndicate reinforcements painted in deceptive civilian hues. Radios crackled across the link. Ethan's voice, steady as bedrock. Eyes on tails. Flank left, draw 'em wide. The bikes split, Riley peeling off with a roar that echoed off the rock faces. His maneuver a feint to pull the lead sedan into a narrow defile. Olivia floored it, the van lumbering forward as the pursuing trucks gained, their engines a menacing snarl. One veered close, a side mirror nearly clipping hers, but she swerved into a rutted shoulder, the jolt rattling her teeth, buying seconds. Ahead, Caleb signaled the mill's silhouette, a hulking ruin of rusted beams and crumbling silos, perched on a bluff overlooking the dry riverbed. They burst into the lot, tires screeching on cracked concrete, dismounting in a fluid rush. Lena waited in a nondescript SUV, her face taut under a wide-brim hat, flanked by 2 trusted runners. Ex-cops turned advocates, their eyes scanning for threats. "Hand over now," she urged, briefcase and satchel exchanged in a blur of hands, no words wasted. Elias lingered a beat, clasping Olivia's arm. "You saw it first, the powder, the lie. Thank you for the light." But the syndicate's trucks crested the bluff, skidding to a halt in a blockade of grit and aggression. Doors flew open, 6 figures emerging, not with dust this time, but chains and bats, faces hardened by desperation. Ethan's crew formed a line, a wall of leather and loyalty, no weapons drawn, but presence unyielding. "Stand down," Ethan called, his voice carrying over the wind's howl. "The truth's out. Your dust can't bury it now." The leader hesitated, bat lowering as Lena's runners flanked her, badges flashing from reformed oversight. Whispers of the ledger's contents had already leaked through secure channels, tipping the scales. One operative lunged, chain whistling through the air, but Riley intercepted with a sidestep and grapple, pinning him without a blow landing, restraint born of honor, not rage. Olivia grabbed a loose pipe from the mill's debris, her stance mirroring the bikers, heart thundering with the rhythm of defiance. The standoff stretched, tension coiling like a spring in the sun's glare, until the leader's shoulders slumped, the fight draining like water from parched earth. "It's over," he muttered, dropping his weapon, the others following suit. Surrenders rippled through the group, zip ties clicking into place as Caleb called for backup, clean authorities. Ones the vow had vetted through years of shadowed rides. As the runners escorted the captives away, Lena turned to the crew, satchel secured. "This breaks them. Families reunited, voices heard. You've honored more than oaths today." Elias boarded her SUV, a final nod to Olivia sealing the bond. The convoy dispersed, bikes and van peeling back toward the highway, the mill fading in the dust. Olivia rode beside Ethan now, the shared silence a testament to sparks preserved. The powder's threat had dissolved, but the legacy of that diner night endured, a promise of justice, woven from unlikely threads, riding eternal under the vast desert sky. The road ahead gleamed with possibility, honor's quiet engine carrying them forward. The desert highway stretched like a silver vein under the relentless afternoon sun, its asphalt shimmering in waves of heat that distorted the horizon into a mirage of redemption. Olivia rode pillion behind Ethan, the bike's steady vibration syncing with the pulse of victory, thrumming through her chest, the wind tugging at her jacket like a gentle prod toward home, or whatever shape it took now. The mill's rusted silhouette had long faded in the rear view, swallowed by dust devils dancing in the wake, but the weight of the ledgers lingered, a cargo lighter than the shadows they'd banished. Elias was safe, his testimony en route to voices that could echo across borders, unraveling the syndicate's web of false promises and silent erasures. Families would wake to truths instead of voids, mothers reclaiming sons from the grip of deception, all because a waitress's eyes had caught a telltale powder and refused to look away. Ethan's grip on the handlebars was firm, his broad shoulders a bulwark against the slipstream, the iron vow patch on his back a banner fluttering in the breeze. He'd ridden these roads for decades, chasing ghosts from Marcus's last stand, the oath sworn in the acrid smoke of a bunker, "Keep the light for those who lose it, brother. No one rides alone." Tonight, that light had found form in Olivia, her quick swing of the coffee pot a pivot point that turned ambush into alliance. The crew rode loose formation now, Caleb and Riley flanking the van she'd driven earlier, its engine humming with the evidence sealed inside. Canisters neutralized, confessions recorded on Caleb's discreet device. No blood spilled, no vengeance taken, just the quiet triumph of honor prevailing. A moral poetry etched in the desert's vast scroll. As the sun dipped toward the jagged peaks, casting long shadows that clawed at the sagebrush, they pulled into a roadside overlook, a weathered pullout with picnic tables scarred by wind and time, overlooking a canyon where eagles wheeled on thermals. The engines cut to silence, leaving only the whisper of cooling metal and the distant rush of a hidden stream carving through stone. Olivia dismounted first, her boots hitting gravel with a crunch that echoed her newfound steadiness. The denim jacket dusted red from the trail. She leaned against the bike, inhaling the sharp tang of pine resin mingling with exhaust, her eyes tracing the canyon's depths where secrets pooled like forgotten rains. Ethan joined her, helmet tucked under his arm, his face softened by the golden light, lines around his eyes crinkling not with weariness, but quiet pride. "You didn't have to come this far," he said, voice gravelly as the road they'd conquered, pulling a water skin from his saddlebag and offering it. The cool liquid tasted of minerals and miles, a simple gesture that bridged the chasm between diner stranger and chosen kin. She took a swig, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand, the powder's memory a faint ghost on her tongue. "Promised my brother I'd watch for sparks like yours. Javier saw the dust take too many. Good folks ground down by suits who peddle lies. This, stopping it cold. It's what he couldn't." Her words carried the weight of unshed tears. The family's fracture mended in this unlikely circle. The crew gathered loosely, Caleb unpacking a map under the table's shade, Riley scanning the ridge with habitual vigilance, his cross tattoo a subtle anchor in the fading light. Elias's face flickered in her mind, the whistleblower's weary gratitude at the mill, his briefcase a vessel for justice long deferred. He'd spoken of a ledger entry for a girl named Sophia, barely 18, lured by a job ad that promised stability across the line, only to vanish into the syndicate's fog. Elias's vow to her mother had mirrored their own: redeem the erased, let truth be the rider that outpaces fear. Now, with Lena's network amplifying the files, raids were underway. Clean sweeps on the false fronts, families pulled from the brink, no dramatic explosions, just the steady grind of accountability. Authorities once blind, now turning spotlights on the rot. Caleb looked up from the map, his medic's eyes warm with the camaraderie of survivors. Words filtering back already. That spotter from the arroyo? He's flipping, naming drop points. The dust rings are cracking. He folded the paper with care, the creases like folds in a flag of truce. Riley nodded from his perch on a boulder, his silence eloquent, the cross glinting as he holstered a flare gun, unused, a symbol of restraint. These men, bound by Marcus's echo and their own scars, had built a family from the wreckage, vets trading badges for brotherhood, wanderers finding purpose in the vow. Olivia saw it now, the threads weaving her in. Her abuela's resilience in Caleb's steady hands, Javier's fire in Ethan's unyielding path. The sun kissed the canyon rim, igniting it in flames of orange and crimson, the air cooling to a balm that soothed the day's grit. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch light but laden, like passing a torch. The road doesn't end here. If you ever need a ride or just eyes in the dark, the vow's got your back. His words sealed it. A promise unspoken but ironclad, the kind that outlasted engines and empires. She smiled, the first real one since the diner's chaos, feeling the spark within her steady, no longer flickering alone. As dusk draped the overlook in velvet shadows, the crew mounted up once more, engines stirring to life in a chorus of resolve. Olivia climbed behind Ethan, the bike leaning into the curve as they rolled toward the highway's glow, taillights stringing out like beads of light against the encroaching night. The syndicate's silent attack had been shattered, not by fury, but by loyalty's quiet force. Waitress and biker, whistleblower and warriors, a chosen family riding as one. Justice bloomed in the aftermath, moral vines reclaiming the barren ground, redemption a horizon ever unfolding. In the desert's embrace, under stars emerging like witnesses to honor, they pressed on, the powder's curse dissolved into legend, promises fulfilled in the endless ride. Thank you for riding along on this tale of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds. If it stirred your soul, hit that subscribe button to join us for more stories where honor lights the way.